it back to where it was.
You're too young to remember that. You had to sticking it together with sellotape.
Just pulling it out my car. That's all. Yeah. Done.
For season 2, do you have a theme, an ongoing theme you want to kind of cover this season, or is it an episode by episode basis?
All right, what's that? The theme, and there is a genuine subtitle on the show, which is the Rise of the Villains, and it's very much about the transition from old school mafia type villainy to the kind of grandiose, grotesque, gothic villainy that Gotham is slowly moving towards. The crimes are more grander, the villains are more large scale and theatrical. Monsters start to come out of the woodwork.
Knowing how Barbara and Gordon's relationship ended in the comics, how do you approach that on the show?
Yeah, that's one of those odd things about doing a show which has a future already mapped out for it. You have to try and be true to that, but come up with twists on stuff. If you just tell people what they already know about those characters and those events, I mean, there's a certain fun to that, but we're always trying to find a different angle in the secret. If those were your parents, we're going to tell the secrets that your parents don't tell you until you open the drawer after they're dead and discover, oh my God. It's that kind of stuff that we're revealing about those relationships.
We got a little bit of a tease of the Joker last season. What's his presence going to be like this season?
Well, he's in Arkham. If that is in fact the Joker, he's in Arkham, and when Barbara Keane is put in the first series, also in the wing of Arkham where the worst of the worst are kept, and an event happens which allows him to be involved in the next few episodes.
Yeah. He gets to fulfill his destiny in a very grand way.
Sean was talking about how the first 3 episodes really are intertwined. It's kind of an epic kind of start to it. So you obviously have a large ensemble. You're dealing with a lot of different stories. What was the choice to kind of service all of them over kind of a 3-episode arc, or how's that happen?
I think one thing we all learn, but mostly because of my responsibility, is the world is so vast. There are so many storylines and characters and situations you can portray. You can kind of overstuff yourself. And if I was going to criticize ourselves for that first season, it's like we tried to, which is a comic book thing. You can stuff more into a comic book world than you can into a sort of classical drama. But this season, we're much more telling coherent arcs that go straight through the year. It's also partly the luxury of having a full order and knowing how many we're going to do. It's less. We started out with the notion that there would be a procedural element, and frankly, the world is too kind of antic and Dionysian to allow for that kind of formal structure. Every episode has to go where the characters in the story take it. So every episode is going to be different. Every episode is going to be a little movie. Every episode is going to have its own energy and pop.
Do you like the idea of doing these kind of standalones for each of the characters, so you can service them a little bit more rather than is that a format that works for you or not?
Well, it's hard because one story is in motion, and again, they're active storylines. They're not the kind of storylines where people can brood for an episode. Well, it's hard to explain to an actor that, all right, in this episode you're going to sit on your couch, do that. So the trick from a writing point of view is to keep it. If you don't like the scene we're in now, we're going to be in a different scene in 2 minutes with a different character. But it's much more about keeping a coherent through line across the episodes, so that each story stands alone, regardless of whether it's standalone or an episode.
What new villains are we going to see this season?
God, we thought long and hard about this, and I mean, it's like so many of the characters don't have origin stories, so it's not just a question of like enjoying going back to an origin story. It's who fits in a realistic world. You know, they've got to have their feet on the ground. So some characters are all advanced, like stylistically, but we found the Mr. Freeze story very emotional. And that's one we're going to look at. Hugo Strange is a very interesting character who's never had an origin story, you know, as is the Calendar Man. So these are people, but Azrael is a character we're starting very, 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 very way back, and Tigress also.
Cool. Sean mentioned a new guy joining the Good Guys. What can you tell us about that?
Good guys.
I think he said it was Lucius Fox.
Did he
Was
actually
it
do
Lucius
that?
Fox?
Lucius
It was?
Fox.
Okay,
Lucius
sorry.
Fox.
So, what's his role going to be, or are you able to?
Well, again, we're sort of starting explaining how Lucius Fox and Bruce Wayne got to be so tight. How did Lucius come into his life? What was his role in Wayne Enterprises and his relationship with Bruce's father? He is instrumental in unlocking some of the secrets that Bruce will discover down in what will later become known as the Batcave, which is now just his father's secret office.
Sorry, that's all you have time for.